Everyone, thanks for joining. So first, I want to say a big welcome to the entire RCC community. This is really exciting. This is not just our first podcast live streamed, but we're also streaming across Discord. We're streaming across Reddit. This is the first time that I've had a chance to bridge both communities and talk about everything crypto. And I know everyone on here is really excited. So a little bit of background for those on, especially on the Reddit side, you may not know that we have a very active analyst community on the Discord side. And the folks that we have on here, while we aren't going to get really heavy into the analytical stuff, we will draw on that background a little bit as we talk about the market, as we talk about different trends over the past year or even just the past week. Before we get into that, though, let's go ahead and do some introductions. So first, I'll introduce myself. You've probably known me under a few names. I've been Big Poppy. I'm now Mr. Poppy. I manage the analyst group in Discord. I'm a very frequent poster of what I would call very average but good-looking technical analysis on the market page there. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Mr. Tom Crown.
Yeah, thank you, man. You've upgraded from Big Poppy to Mr. Poppy. It's a welcome change. I love it. I'm Tom Crown. I'm a YouTuber. I'm active on the Reddit cryptocurrency page and in the Discord. I've been in crypto longer than I can remember. I love charts and trading, but we're here today to chat about crypto in general, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Let's go to Mr. Mister.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. I'm Mr. Mister. I've been a marketer my whole life and recently not recently, it's recently in traditional timelines, but it feels like a lifetime that I switched over to working in the crypto industry. And recently I find myself knee deep, elbow deep, eye deep in DeFi and just kind of, working on projects and trying to understand where everything is going, and just love the space, love the speed of innovation in this space. And I'm just ecstatic to be here. And yeah, looking forward to kicking off with all you guys.
And then finally, Oz.
Hi, so I'm Oz, sometimes known as Big Man Oz. I've been in crypto since like March or February time of 2021, so I'm still fairly new compared to the rest of the guys, but I have learned fairly quickly. I've mainly been focusing my time on trading and that kind of general area of crypto. I'm pretty good at this now, I'd say, but still lots to learn. And yeah, ever since I started, it's pretty much been all I've spent my time on. Very passionate about it and happy to share this opportunity with these guys.
Thank you, Oz. So to kick things off, we're going to talk a little bit about just the past week and what the markets look like. This is the second week of 2022, but this is a new year. The first thing everyone always wants to know about is Bitcoin, right? What is Bitcoin doing? It's always driving the market. It is the king crypto. Honestly, if you're just looking at it from a pure price action perspective, right, it seems like it's not doing much. But if you were to zoom out a little bit, you're going to find that Bitcoin is coming into the end of a 3-month downtrend. At least we think it's the end, right? And Tom Crown, I'm going to bring you in on this because I know this is really your specialty. What are your thoughts with where we're at ending 2021, where we did, which was really at the same price we started 2021 at? Where do you think this first quarter of 2022 is going to take us?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that we did have some gains. It might not felt like it with all the sideways action we've had. But we definitely had some gains in 2021. We opened at 29,000. We closed, I don't even remember, like 40 something. Didn't feel spectacular. From an analysis side, the chart's not looking awesome. But from someone who has a lot of experience in this space, and I've watched kind of the same cycle repeat, I think Bitcoin's exactly where it needs to be. We've seen retail pretty much exit. We have a great showing here, by the way. Shout out to all 400 out on Reddit and 200 in Discord. Awesome turnout. But in general, retail is not so interested. Price hasn't actually invalidated any structural sense of the chart, in my opinion, yet. We haven't broken September's lows. We came very close. Sentiment's low, retail's out. For me, that's all the signs of a Bitcoin bounce is coming.
I think that's actually a really good point. Well, really, a few good points. One, I agree with you. A lot of retail traders have stepped out of the market. What you're seeing right now when you're looking at the chart is predominantly whales, market makers, hedge funds, big players in the market that are basically traded against each other, trying to figure out what the other one's trying to do. What we did do, though, is we respected a support level that we saw back in September, which is what you brought up, right? We didn't invalidate that support level. We respected it and we bounced, and we're currently sitting just a little bit over it, right? And so I would agree. I like where we're at. I think that this is where we need to be. I think we found a pretty healthy support. And when Bitcoin kind of sits in a range like this, we know what that leads to, which is you're going to start to see some altcoin action, some excitement, some fun, which we've already been seeing, right? Some of these alts are starting to pop. And so 2022 is off to a good start for certain projects. Now, also looking back this week, one of the interesting things, especially if you follow NFTs, was the launch or the massive airdrop and then launch of Looks, which is Looks Rare, which is meant to be a competitor, a decentralized competitor to OpenSea. And a lot of people in the NFT community have been a little bit frustrated with OpenSea for various reasons. I'm not going to say I have an opinion either way. It works some days, other days it is a little bit frustrating. But I think that was a really interesting idea, one, to do the airdrop, which is just for anyone that has transacted a certain amount on OpenSea. Then you get the airdrop, then you can log in and check it out. And it's basically a decentralized version of it. And it's kind of funny to think about how some of these Web 2 companies, which you might paint OpenSea as kind of a pseudo Web 2, meaning legacy kind of technology, are now seeing that rising competition from the decentralized side of crypto. Kind of the same thing that you were talking about earlier, Mr. You mentioned that you're very heavy into DeFi, which is decentralized finance. And when we say decentralized finance, we mean things that not Coinbase, right? Coinbase is centralized. It's a corporate entity. It's owned by shareholders. On the decentralized side, that's where you have projects like, say, Curve, right? You own Curve tokens. That means you are a member to the Curve decentralized autonomous organization, the DAO, and you have voting rights, kind of like a shareholder, but there's no real corporate entity. So I'm just curious, Mr. with this recent development in the NFT space, what are your thoughts? Do you think this is something we're going to see more of? More decentralized challenges to some of the kind of corporate behemoths that are floating around in the crypto space?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, from what I'm seeing, there's a lot of need out there for coordination, right? And with respect to whether it's DAOs that are forming around NFTs, it could be investment DAOs, they could be anything, right? I mean, we recently saw a Constitution DAO, right, try to take crowdsourced user funds and actually go win an auction for a hard copy of the Constitution. I think that's going to happen more and more. And really what I'm really interested to see is how the ecosystem around decentralized finance platforms builds, right? Because when we talk about DeFi, just as you said, Big Poppy, Mr. Big Poppy, it's all about the decentralized nature, right? But that comes with problems, right? Everything from decentralized Web3 infrastructure, whether it's, who's all the nodes you need to stand up, or something maybe a little bit more trivial, but I would say quite important, is operational organization, all the way to how do these DAOs, how do these decentralized autonomous organizations interface with the real world, right? Take Constitution DAO, for example. That was going to be a really interesting use case, because what they were trying to do was to leverage the decentralized community to actually go buy a hard asset, right? So there's got to be a bridge somewhere, and the way they did it was they went full KYC on the core members that were driving the DAO, the leadership, right? And they interacted with full KYC entities, the auction house, and what have you. I think that friction point right there is going to have to get addressed in so many ways. And all that to say is, I'm really interested to see how tooling around crypto, more specifically, how tools that enable operations, how that's going to develop around the DeFi ecosystem, right? We're seeing a proliferation of competitors to governance platforms and fulfillment solutions. I think that's super exciting. There's something there, and I think that without giving away my my prediction that I want to say for later, the growth of the ancillary services around DeFi, I think, is super interesting. But just to kind of bring it back, Mr. Poppy, it's super excited to see anything that touches the whole decentralized space, right? So with Looks Rare, I think definitely we'll see a lot more of that kind of stuff.
No, thanks, Mr. Yeah, the decentralized side of the house, while it can be very intimidating for a lot of new traders because you have to set up your wallet. Some of the, you always hear horror stories about rug pulls and hacks and all those things. But honestly, I think 90% of the most interesting innovation in crypto is in the decentralized space. And a lot of people forget, too, the king of decentralization, Bitcoin, right? He's not only the granddaddy of crypto, but he's a purely decentralized financial apparatus. So talking about DeFi, I think one of the interesting narratives to come out of the kind of the last half of 2021 and coming into early 2022 is DeFi. You may have heard things like DeFi 1.0 to DeFi 2.0. And you may be wondering, well, maybe I don't know what that is. So DeFi 1.0 is that kind of that first crop of DeFi platforms that you saw blow up at the end of 2020. Stuff like Yearn, stuff like MakerDAO, right? Those are the real OGs in the space. All the stuff that's built on Ethereum. And then as you went through 2021 and as gas fees rose, competitors to Ethereum started to rise and implement smart contract capabilities. And then obviously the narrative evolved a little bit. Ethereum started to lose a little bit of its dominance. And some of those DeFi 1.0 platforms that are on Ethereum really started to lose their luster, kind of fell out of favor. And while they didn't stop innovating, you did see the prices of the tokens, right? The governance tokens. People weren't as interested in actually owning the tokens. They just wanted to invest in the platforms and get the money, invest stable coins, invest ETH, invest whatever, and gain some passive income on that. And then through the year, you started to see these platforms, they realized, hey, we're just not competitive now. We got to make changes. And so kind of the second half of the year now into early 2022 is this whole narrative of, DeFi 2.0. And that's where you started to see new things coming up like Convex, like Ohm. I'm sure most of the people in here have heard of Ohm, right? And they started to introduce new ideas. That kind of narrative, not only is that innovation continuing, but what I think I'm starting to see, and I wonder if some of the guys on the call would agree with me, is you're starting to see a lot of money pour back into DeFi governance and DeFi projects because that innovation, that transition into DeFi 2 is really starting to take off. And I think a good example, or there's many examples, right? I think you could list down a few of the top projects, right? I mean, there's always the no-brainers, stuff like Convex and Curve right now, very strong narrative for it, right? Another one is DopeX. DopeX is one that I think, has just seen an incredible rally going into the new year. And this is all because and again, remember what I said earlier, right? It's not retail that's driving the market right now. It's big money, traditional finance kind of money coming into the market. And they're looking at what is this smart play. And when you've had a year like 2021, where these governance tokens, they really kind of struggled, right? But now they're starting to launch all these new features, these really clever ideas for tokenomics, for emissions, for passive income. And they're making big plays on this, maybe a little bit of a gamble. But I'm kind of curious what you guys think. I'm always really excited about DeFi, so it's something I love to talk about. But Tom Crown,
yeah, man,
what are your thoughts?
So I'm not the biggest. I'm not the biggest on these concepts yet, just because I guess you can call me an old boomer, slow to adapt in crypto. I move slow, and so I've been watching this build from the sidelines. I'm not quite ready to pick winners or losers yet, but what I can say without a doubt is this is the future. Crypto is moving in this path where it's branching away from centralized sources. We can create these DAOs, we can create almost like these like money markets that we've never seen in crypto before, and they're only going to keep pushing forward. I think we're seeing some exodus off of Ethereum. This might be a hot take, simply because the network's congested, and so we're looking for other networks to do these transactions on. And I think we're going to see a lot of growth in this year in that space.
I just want to add to the point that Tom was just making. It is really interesting to see where it's all going, and totally hear you as far as not quite sure where it's, who the winners and losers are, certainly. If you're who you're ready to kind of hitch your horse to, right? Or your wagon, however that saying goes. For me, I think it's been really interesting to see that transition from 1.0 to 2.0. And I think everyone kind of it's almost like everyone has their own little definition of what DeFi 2.0 is. But for me, I find really intriguing the mindset shift that's happening between 1.0 and 2.0, right? For me, it was a lot of high ultra emissions, ultra inflation rewards, right? You were seeing the crazy APYs that you still see somewhat today, because it does work, right? To attract new users, to attract deposits, grow your TVL, grow that revenue. Now that we're, let's say from the beginning, the first DeFi summer, we're almost 2 years in, right? So what we're starting to see is a lot of these projects that were highly emitting, they're well into their emission schedule, which means they're starting to have to ask themselves the tough question of, well, what happens when all our tokens run out, right? Or what happens when we have so few tokens that we have to start turning down the emissions, the amount of tokens that we're rewarding out, because that's going to affect the rate, the yield that you're generating, how much you're passively earning on your asset, right? So to your point, Mr. Poppy, the proliferance of, forks, for example, around Olympus, right? I think looking at Abracadabra, the way they're doing the whole borrowing markets, I think that is super interesting, because the way that they have designed their tokenomics has kind of like up-leveled the game theory that has kind of been foundational to DeFi this whole time, which is, how do you incentivize users, right, to participate in the project, give them, for example, rewards in the form of tokens, to give them the incentive to support the project, whether it's buying more tokens or staking it, or marketing on behalf of the project, right? I think the way that the game theorists have been up-leveled to really kind of focus on that next stage of DeFi, which is owning your liquidity, right? Having revenue, being revenue positive, right? And starting to kind of pull back away from that key value proposition that has been rates. It's just been yield. It's been how many decimals are in front of that percentage sign, right? It's shifting away from that and more into, okay, how can we be long-term sustainable? How do we create value without having to emit, without having to reward a crazy amount of tokens out there? I think we're just going to see more of that. And I think it speaks to just how popular these platforms are. I mean, look at the TVL tied up in Abracadabra and Olympus right now. I think they're certainly killing it. And you got Tokimac out there as well. That all these projects are also cross-chain, by the way, which kind of speaks to that, I think, that final aspect of Web 2, which is not a single chain mindset, right? It's using these different chains for their different advantages and trying to optimize how you're structuring your trades, for example, right? To take the best advantage of all these benefits, really. But then anyway, I may be going off on a tangent at this point, but yeah, no. I think that's super interesting for 2.0.
The DeFi space is really interesting. I think it's a lot of fun to talk about. And like you said, game theory, it's evolving so quick. So I wanted to pause on DeFi. I wanted to take a minute and so bring Oz into this. So Oz is our resident day trader in the group. We put together a group of podcasters. We wanted to get a variety of backgrounds, right? Big Man, that's his other name. Big Man Oz. He's going to just give us a little bit of perspective, as someone that's been day trading, what the past week has been like and maybe what the next week could be like.
All right, so this week for Bitcoin has been, for the most part, fairly boring. We've just been stuck in a range. And while it may seem boring, it's actually had a lot of opportunities as a trader, and also just as an opportunity to DCA, which is just averaging down your entry pretty much. It's been a really good week, and I think that potentially it's setting us up for a breakout soon. However, I think we need to sustain these levels and ensure that we're taking out these lows and reaching new highs. But when we took out 39K on the 10th of January, just the beginning of this week, it started up really nicely. And pretty much since then, we've just been uptrending. And then later on in the week, around 14th of January, it kind of started to slow down. I don't want to get too technical, but it's taking out liquidity, which essentially means that people can enter, big fish can buy more. And as you've seen, retailers are kind of getting scared now, while institutions are still buying, which is fairly bullish for the most part. So I'm feeling fairly confident, and I think this week is gonna continue to go up. I think that, in my opinion, it'll be a pretty good week, and quarter one should be fairly nice. I think January, it started off not very nice. We had a dump from New Year's, essentially. We've been on a downtrend, which wasn't the best start to the year. But now that we've seen these lows and we've kind of got a stable base, I'm feeling fairly confident in it. So, yeah, I think we can see upside soon. Either upside or just range.
You bring up a great point, Oz. You said, for someone DCAing, and a lot of people out there might not be familiar, dedicated cost average, dollar cost average, it's a very traditional approach to any investment. And it's one that I personally recommend to pretty much anybody who asks me how to get into crypto. And that's like treating it like a 401k. You're slowly making small purchases over time. You're averaging out some of that volatility, and it really does protect you from downside. In fact, you can almost root for downside because you're going to make a buy next month. So if it goes down, you get to buy more. I think that you're right there. I think that right now could be some very solid time to get those DCA buys in. And I'm leaning towards you there on some more upside into the end of this month. God knows it's the market and anything can happen, but that's we haven't seen enough of a relief bounce. We haven't really seen any upside action since November 10th, and I think we're overdue.
Yeah, Tom, I tend to agree with you because, when I love looking at charts, and I think you between you and Big Man Oz, I think it's a lot of information, right, to kind of digest. For me, just kind of looking at macro on-chain metrics, right? Just kind of what the supply of Bitcoin looks like overall, what the flows of Bitcoin in and out of exchanges look like. Still bullish macro, right? And I think to your point, Tom, the DCA strategy is super valid because for me, in my opinion, I think the mindset that has been really helpful for me is to kind of think like the big money that Poppy was talking about, right? Think like a banker, right? And now that we have all these different connections popping up that's connecting the crypto markets with the traditional financial equity markets, right? There's so much money out there, and that what that means is there's a lot of weight to be able to move the price of Bitcoin around, right? Then that's even before we start mentioning leveraged products. And for me, what it looks like is, yes, retail is not able to take the pain. But if you look at macro structure, on-chain structure compared to where the price is, I think there's a big gap there, right? There's a mismatch. And that's what tells me that if, I have any sort of spare cash or savings that I want to, say, put into my quote unquote 401k, that yes, it's these undervalued assets like Bitcoin, in my opinion, right now, that I would rotate into, right? Because the big boys are trying to keep the price down so that they can continue to accumulate at these relatively low prices. Meanwhile, the fear that it's putting into retail heads is working to their benefit, right? So if you can fight that fear, it's hard. I think that's a good place to be as a trader.
I think you bring up some good points there, Mister. And I want to share a little bit of, very briefly, a very short personal story and adventure that may resonate with a lot of people on the call, especially if you are new to trading. If you're sitting there listening to this and this is your first day, your first week, your first month of trading crypto, what I'm going to share with you may very well be something you've experienced or you're about to experience, which is when I first started trading, I just went in, I dumped a bunch of money into my account and I said, this is cool. I'm going to buy when the candle turns green. That's so easy, right? I'll make money. And then sell when it turns red. And I'm trying not to laugh because looking back, it's actually pretty amusing. I actually did make some money the first couple times I did that. I got really lucky. And then I lost it all. In like the 2 weeks after that. Very unhappy with myself, right? But you got to take that's an education. That's a wake up call. And what Tom said, what Mr. said, and Oz, I think this is important, especially for folks that maybe just aren't sure how comfortable they are actually actively trading. Maybe you just want to invest. And in that case, I think it's really important. Just go out there, Google DCA, dollar cost average. It's probably the lowest stress way to invest in crypto. You just buy a little bit every now and then, maybe every week, maybe every month, every paycheck, whatever works for you. That is going to let you sleep soundly at night, because whether the market goes up or down, you're just building that portfolio. And I can promise you, as long as you're buying smartly and you're not buying bad projects, right, you're going to do well in the next bull run. It's really a good way to do stuff. One of the things we were talking about earlier, part of the DeFi, was Ethereum competitors. It's no secret that if you've done anything on Ethereum in the past year, the gas fees are just extraordinary. It's not just that the gas fees are uncomfortable. The gas fees have single-handedly shuttered entire projects because it prevented most retail traders from doing things. If you have some sort of decentralized app or DApp that required, say, multiple transactions with the chain in order to complete something, say you wanted to lock up some tokens to earn interest, but maybe it takes, say, 3 transactions to do it. And if each of those transactions costs $100, $200, whatever it may be, right? Multiply
Unusable.
that by 3. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Unusable. So what is that done to the market over the past year? Well, the interesting thing, and a lot of you have probably seen this, is you start to see users kind of rotating through these competitors to Ethereum. The competitors to we call these layer ones. Layer one is what Ethereum is. So other layer ones, and we've seen this cycle. Solana was one, had its moment where it was very bright, very popular. And then we saw, money starting to rotate out because it pumped. People took their profits, they moved on, right? And they do the same thing. They went to Avalanche. They went to, I think more recently, we're seeing maybe Luna, we're seeing Phantom. But you're seeing that rotation just over and over as the market, one, is just trying to chase, some value. They're trying to make some profit, but also the market's exploring. They're seeing what other chains are out there. And so that was one of the interesting developments is seeing. We went from a world before 2021 where really it was just Ethereum. And now you have 4, 5, 6, 7 chains. Actually, if you look at any TVL tracker, you'll probably see about 20 different chains on there because there's quite a few more. You just probably aren't thinking about stuff like smaller ones, like you have Tezos, Algo, CeeLo, and a bunch I can't even think of on top of my head. It's just really an interesting time to be in this space and to see all of this innovation and expansion of the market to happen. So anyways, enough on the layer one. I have some fun things I wanted to maybe throw at you guys that we could talk about. First question, I want to direct this to Tom Crown. Tom, Memecoins. Where do you think we are going to go 2022 and beyond with Memecoins? Are they actually going to stay relevant? Tesla just said that they're going to take Dogecoin, right? And he's going to send Dogecoin to Mars, I believe. So. Oh
man, if Elon has anything to do with it, right? I think what's really important is we talk about meme coins. What is a meme coin? What makes it a meme coin? A silly name, a picture of a dog. There's underlying engines to each of these coins, and they are different. And I think that's something that new investors aren't looking at. So a lot of people, even in my own personal life, have come to me in 2021 and said, "I'm buying Doge" or "I'm buying Shiba." They don't see a difference. They think they're the exact same thing. In reality, they're very different. Doge is akin to Bitcoin, Litecoin. This is a proof of work chain, whereas Shiba is an ERC20 token. And I think it's not really fair to lump everything together just because maybe it's silly or has a picture of a dog or whatever the definition is. I think that needs to be defined first. But absolutely, people aren't going to stop liking memes. They're not going to stop liking jokes. And that doesn't necessarily mean every meme coin is going to do well. In fact, I would lean towards a lot of them won't. But certainly we're going to see repeats of kind of these hypes based on, well, mostly community, which has value of itself. I definitely can admit that it has value. But I think we're going to see cycles of them. I definitely don't think it's done. I'm curious and trying to find what's the next one. What are people laughing at next, right?
What I'm really waiting for, Tom, is for a cat coin to get to the top 10, man.
Why?
We've had so many dog coins.
Exactly.
Where are the cat people?
It seems weird to me. The internet loves cats, right? You guys out there, you love cats. Mm-hmm. Why is Catcoin? God, if there's a Catcoin, I'm not endorsing it right now. But where's Catcoin? The people are demanding it. It is weird to me. We had CryptoKitties back in 2017. NFTs went wild in the last year. Nobody seemed to care. Is it a curse of the cats, I wonder?
Yeah, that's something to keep an eye on this year. Speaking of more fun stuff, I was actually thinking about some of the other interesting developments we saw over 2021, and one of those is celebrity endorsements. I don't think there's ever been a time in crypto where so many celebrities decided they wanted to get in. From Kim Kardashian, I think she had the Ethereum Max, right? Jay-Z and a lot of other celebrities are buying NFTs. Matt Damon is doing crypto.com advertisements, which, by the way, is a really cool video. You should check it on YouTube. Not endorsing crypto.com at all. Just the video is cool. Matt Damon's a cool guy, I think.
Bobby, I hate to interrupt you, but I want to say it, guys. Everybody, if crypto doesn't go well this year, we're all just going to agree to blame that Matt Damon video. Can we all have consensus on that?
Yes.
It's his fault.
Yes, I agree. It was pretty hype. It was the most hyped crypto thing I've ever seen. So yeah, I'm going to blame him for sure if that tanks the market. But we can't forget the number one celebrity presence in the space last year, which, Tom, one guess, who was it?
Musk?
Yes. I was worried for a second that you weren't going to get. Yes. Elon Musk. This is a man who, regardless of your opinion of him or of Tesla, had the ability to move billions of dollars in the market with a tweet. Just phenomenal. I don't know that we've ever had anything like that ever in history, right? It's such a fascinating kind of psychology of the market, right? People see Elon tweet a picture of a dog or something, and they decide, I need to put a lot of money into Dogecoin now. So Tom, I know you're very big on the charts, right? But how do you factor something like that? How do you factor in the semantics of the market when you're trying to trade?
Well, I think if history rhymes, I think we just short every time he tweets now, right? I think that's our consensus. But to be serious, you can't. You really can't. I'm going to say something kind of mystical here is, as a chart guy, I truly do believe, and I can't tell you how this works or why, but charts do seem to bake in the future in some way. If you look at Doge and its history, it was looking very bullish way before Elon got into it, way before he started telling everyone about it. We saw it come off in its Bitcoin valuation from a floor that was very historical. It climbed up and broke out, and it really wasn't until it had already broken out that Elon got jumped on board. Maybe he was kind of FOMO buying it like we all have done in the past. But yeah, long answer short, you can't. These are, people say black swan, and I actually hate that term, but they are kind of black swan in the sense of, how do you predict the Musk?
Yeah, you actually bring up a good point. So this is one of the things that for those who aren't into technical analysis, there are who I would call chart purists or chart maxis. They believe that everything possible is reflected in that chart. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be insider trading. It could be TV commercials. Anything is reflected in the price action on that chart. And I'm not going to say that's right or wrong, right? But what I think is interesting is people like Elon Musk really test that theory quite a bit. And some people have done this. Actually, we had a little bit of fun doing this earlier in the year, me and some of the other analysts in the group, charting some of the Elon tweets. And so one thing people forget is Elon actually, well, maybe they don't forget, right? He is a brilliant man. He's a smart man. And he worked in financial sectors before Tesla and other areas. It could be coincidence, but it seems like his tweets do sometimes line up with certain key levels in the market. Maybe that's coincidence. I don't know. What do you think, Tom? Do you think he's scheming, pumping those Dogecoin bags, or you just think he's just having fun?
I don't want to give him all that credit. I don't want to give him enough credit that he's sitting there on the charts waiting. I think, honestly, Elon is very entertained by himself, as we all are, to a degree. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's sitting there on the charts. Like I said, I can't explain this. I wish I had a real concrete connection. There's no real rationale other than you maybe just kind of believe that that's how it works, and maybe that's confirmation bias. But it seems to be that way. I can't work around it. In my charting years, I've seen a few other things that seem along those lines. For instance, God, you guys are going to call me crazy now, but you look at the moon cycles, full moons and new moons. I wish it wasn't true. I wish I could say it was a bunch of gibberish, but markets move. They move, and they move with a correlation that is too strong for chaotic coincidence. And I think maybe Elon's just part of that, maybe that moon cycle.
He might be sitting there at night monitoring the positions of the planets to do his Dogecoin analysis. And some people may be sitting there laughing about this, but what's actually really funny about astrological or financial astrology. It's a real thing. It's not just a meme. There is a, I won't say causation, but there's a definite correlation in how certain markets respond to these cycles, right? But if you go back, 80 to 100 years, there's a very famous financial analyst, W.D. Gann, who wrote volumes of books about financial astrology, and whether or not he really believed it or he was just having fun, I guess that's anyone's guess. But people to this day still use that. And some people, like if you had used the lunar cycle to trade Bitcoin over this past year, Tom, if it was I think it was like a monthly, if you just did like a monthly swing on Bitcoin, it was like 60-70% accurate.
Way higher than a coin flip.
Way higher than probably most of us on the call, and for sure most of the people listening in, I think is a good way to put it, right? It's pretty incredible. So one thing I would love to hear from each of the people on the call, predictions about 2022, but not related to price. And I will start this one off. So the one thing that I think is going to be really big 2022 into 23. So I talked a little bit about how we saw a lot of the competitors to Ethereum, to layer ones kind of coming out of the woodwork last year. But one of the big challenges is they don't necessarily communicate, or they don't eloquently communicate with each other. If you want to mature this space, if you want to mature crypto, right, you got to get to at least on par with what Web 2.0, which is really just the internet, right? Web 2.0 is the internet. Web 3.0 is what we would call crypto, and the things crypto brings to that. If you want to mature it to be on level with that, you're going to have a way for things to more easily bridge, communicate, share information, share data, transfer tokens across chains. And so I think this year into next year, so we've seen the rise and maturity of layer ones. Now it's time to bridge them. And so there's technology, you could call it a few different things, right? We'll call it IBC, which is inter-blockchain communications, inter-blockchain technology, I think is going to be a spicy field with a lot of growth potential, just because it's a big gap right now within the space, in a gap that needs to be filled. And there are a lot of projects that are focusing on that. I'm not going to throw them out there. You can Google IBC and kind of do some research for yourself. But I do think that's going to be a really fun development that once we start to see maturity in that space is going to make crypto so much more fun to use. Because if you think about it now, instead of saying, oh, I'm in Ethereum, I'm trading on Ethereum projects, and it costs a lot of gas and pain and energy to go to other chains, even if, say, Phantom has these really great APRs that I want to chase on some project. It's hard to do now. But if you had the proper inner blockchain technology in place, you could probably just click a few buttons and boom, jump into Phantom and do that trade. All right, so that's mine. Let's jump to Tom. What do you think?
Are you sure we don't want to Mr. or Oz? You guys don't. I've been talking a lot. I want to share the mic.
You don't want to follow my prediction? Is that what's going on, Tom?
It's too good. I don't want to have the contrast,
Okay.
so I need a buffer.
Save the best for last.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. I kind of previewed my prediction for 2022, but I'll expand on that a little bit. I think as we see this we'll see a proliferation of DAOs. Mostly, in my opinion, I think we're going to be really looking at investment DAOs, right? DAOs that crowdsource funds from users and then deploy those funds to go earn extra capital, extra passive income that'll come back to the DAO members, right? I think we're going to see a lot more of those. And what that's going to require is we're going to start to see an ecosystem develop around this DeFi 2.0 ecosystem, which is this tooling, right? Which is all these services, these apps, these platforms that are going to help these DAOs do, to Big Poppy's point earlier, do things like communicate, to govern themselves, to interact with the real world, right? I think there's going to be a lot of momentum from retail going into those DAOs, but I also think that there's going to be a lot of funding, right? Whether it's from VC, private equity, your traditional funding markets, or even crypto funding markets. I think there's going to be a lot of funding into the tooling startups that are going to be surrounding these DAOs, right? And the second thing I think that we're going to start to see is as we get deeper into this DeFi 2.0 thing, you're going to start to see a lot of cyclical price action with these different projects. And the one thing that I'm hesitant to really kind of like put a stamp on and commit to on the record is, but I'll do it anyway just because I'm crazy. But one of the things I think we're going to start to see is cyclical price action on projects that either launch on multiple chains or come up with tokenomics that are focused on long-term, post-emissions, long-term stability, revenue-generating tokenomics. I think that's what we're going to see in 2022.
It's actually a really good one, Mr. That, and I can say for a fact that a lot of that DeFi tokenomics, that evolution is too much for my small brain, but it's going to be really exciting to see how that plays out. And I've even heard that on the corporate side, now this could just be rumor, right? But I've seen a few headlines here and there where it's talking about corporations looking at the DAO kind of structure and seeing if there's maybe some inspiration, something that they could build on outside of crypto, outside of DeFi. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. All right.
We'll see. Yeah.
Oz, you've been quiet. I'm going to pick on you. What do you think? 2022, what is going to be your prediction?
All right, well, for 2022, I think we're going to see another run with Metaverse and Web3, that general area. I think we started to see that during November and December time quite aggressively, and it did drop off in the new year quite heavily, actually. A lot of the coins started to decline, coins like Gala, that went down. I think it's a 40 or 50% retrace right now. But then you also have coins like Phantom, Mana, Sand, all of those coins in that general area. They're all doing really good right now. And Phantom, it's a multi-chain coin that's just had a massive run in the last week or two. I think this month it's up 132%. And I think that general area hasn't really finished for 2022. I still think Q1 and Q2 maybe that will continue, and we'll see a big drive there. I think in terms of NFTs, maybe we'll see more utilization. So implementation of smart contracts with NFTs rather than them just being like a cute little picture or, like the computer generated kind of NFTs. I think we'll see a different approach to them this year. I don't think they're going to get fully faded or they're going to completely disappear, obviously, because they're quite a big section of the crypto sphere now. But I definitely think they're going to move to a more utility side of things rather than what we see this year.
If I was going to award someone the best comment of this discussion, I think I would just give it to you, Oz. I think that's something we didn't talk about enough, but you're absolutely right. Metaverse stuff definitely going to keep growing. I mean, over the past week, the biggest trading NFT was metaverse real estate. Stuff like Sandbox is growing pretty popular. Of course, you still have the traditional stuff like the Bored Ape Yacht Club and all the other ape yacht clubs and in the PFPs. Yeah, I don't think those are going to go away, but bringing utility, I see that all over NFT, especially on crypto Twitter, bringing utility to NFTs in all sorts of ways is going to be big. I think I even saw something, maybe it was from like Chainlink, talking about providing like Oracle services to NFTs or providing data feeds to NFTs so it could, kind of like dynamically respond to market conditions or something. I'm sure there's some very interesting things that engineers are going to come up with in NFT world. All right, so that brings us to Mr. Tom Crown.
Right on. So I was asked this question, I feel like 2 years ago, is what was coming in the next year. And looking back, I wouldn't have guessed any of it. Period. We saw Dogecoins, NFTs, DeFi, the birth of so many things. And I would argue that easily in 2021, we saw the crypto space grow more than it had grown in the previous 10 years. The expansion has been light speed. It's so incredible to me. I mean, we have countries now debating whether it's going to be legal tender. We have El Salvador that already took Bitcoin as legal tender. And I'm going to maybe just kind of close my lips on this and say, I didn't see any of these wild things coming. The only thing I can say with confidence is that this year is going to be exactly the same. We're going to see new avenues for crypto growth. We're going to see different applications, and it's just going to look nothing like it did a year ago.
Yeah, that's probably the most accurate of all of our answers. To be fair, the innovation. It's coming at light speed, right? How do you plan for it? It's sometimes you're just not going to see it coming, I think is the best way to put it.
And as someone that's followed it day by day, streaming like every day, I still can't keep up with it. There's just so much in every different field, and I'm excited to see where that goes to. I think we're all going to be surprised at the applications people come up with, even in just the next year.
What I take away from Tom on that one is what I hear you telling me, Tom, is to just ape into all the cool new stuff that launches. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, this is the part where I say none of this is financial advice. That way I'm safe.
We'll start with it next time.
Too late for me.
So I think going into what I think we're about to wrap up here, it's been almost an hour. But before we go, what I would love to do is take a quick scan at the market and let's see what this weekly close it looks like. And it's probably a lot less inspired than any of us are hoping for.
It's been pretty boring.
I was just going to ask Oz, our low time frame day trading friend, what do you think?
I mean, it's setting up nicely. Market structure is okay. I mean, it's still bullish. We're making higher highs, lower lows without getting too technical. It's fairly simple stuff. But, I mean, we've done good. The beginning, or near the beginning of this week, we're at 39K. Although we're only there for a few minutes, not even that, I don't even think we closed below 40 for a considerable amount of time. I say we're doing pretty good. We're still up almost 4,000 from the bottom of this week. So, I think this week should be good. It's definitely a lot more bullish sentiment throughout the whole community. So, yeah, I think going into this week and this weekly close, we shouldn't be too worried.
Looks like we have 2 minutes left. I'm going to toot my own horn here. I set a video out on Friday, and I said CME closed at 43,100. That's probably where we're going to see Monday open. Here we are. Sometimes the weekends are really that easy, is watching the CME group where they close. The market, at least recently, has tended to really just reopen right where it left off. And look at the last 2 days, price has moved up and down, but it's settled at the end of the day at roughly the same price. We're at 43,088. So we're very close. But I would keep my eyes out. I think tomorrow is when we're going to see a break to the upside or downside. I wish I knew the future. But I think we're really just waiting for this weekend trading to be over.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, Tom, that if I could ask you to just elaborate a little bit. So some of the people on the call may not know, what is CME and why do we care what CME is doing?
Yeah, so it's the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and I for years didn't want to give it any credit, but what it is basically big boy trading. They're not trading spot, meaning they're not actually trading Bitcoins. They're trading IOUs, and they, unlike the crypto market, don't trade through the weekends, through holidays, overnight. They close their markets, and so on Friday at 6 p.m. East, I believe, or it's 4 p.m. I'll have to double check. They close down trading for the weekend. They begin trading again Sunday night at, I believe it's 6. It's right before the close. And so what that creates is called a gap. The chart ends somewhere, and then the next daily candle starts wherever price is on spot markets, meaning what you're seeing on Coinbase, etc. And we haven't seen a correlation super tight over the last few years, but in the last few weeks we have, where the CME group ends trading on Friday, we've seen with pretty good consistency, and at least in the last few months, that's about where price is opening. That was my prediction. I just want to toot my own horn. It's not too special. If it didn't happen, I wouldn't have said anything, But we got some flat trading going on, and typically before you see a breakout, unfortunately, we don't know the future if that's to the upside or downside. You see these tight traded ranges. They're called doji candles, or spinning tops, I suppose you call them.
I like that, doji candles. Thank you, Tom. I think it is always interesting to see the layers of complexity that go into what drives market price. And that CME thing, of course, it's not a guarantee, but it is very interesting. Again, I'm always going to say, feel free to Google it. It's great when you hear something new. If you're sitting there and you're like, man, I've never heard of that before, take 5 minutes out of your day and just go Google it. The more you know in this space, the better equipped you're going to be to survive it, to last in it more than just a few weeks. You don't want to be a casualty of crypto. It's too easy to. Arming yourself with knowledge will make you profitable, will make you less stressed, and will keep your spouse from slapping you upside the head if you do something stupid. Yeah. So I think that brings us to the end of this week's podcast. So I was going to do just a little bit of a shout out to the guys who did provide their Twitters. So if you want to follow Oz, it's going to be at Oswald, WALD _ ETH, ETH. If you want to follow Tom Crown, that is easy, Tom Crown Crypto. And if you want to follow me, that's going to be just _Big Poppy. And for everyone else's, we will have to get those next week. But any parting words from anyone on the call?
I'll jump in and say we do plan on taking viewer comments, having you guys out there asking your questions. We did see them, but this was the first episode. We're doing kind of a dry run. It worked out. I think this was amazing. I think we did really well. It was just a little bit too much to try to field those questions at the same time, but that is in the formula. We did not forget.
Definitely. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming and listening. It's been great to see all you guys out here. I think at peak we had 700 people watching at one time, which is really great to see. So yeah, thank you guys all for coming out and watching.
Yeah, appreciate the time that you are all giving us, and thanks for kicking this off, Big Poppy and Buddha. Super, super happy to be here and looking forward to the next time.
Yes, and there will be a next time. Stay tuned. We will post the schedule for the upcoming podcast. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great week trading. Use your stop loss. Be safe. Have a good night. Have a good night. Have a good night. Have a good night.